Welcome to the Missionary on the Mountain podcast, where we discuss all the pertinent social, religious, and political topics of the day. Join us weekly for scripture, news, interviews, and insight into the issues that matter to you. Broadcasting from 8,000 feet deep within the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, consistently conservative and unapologetically Christian. Here is your host, the Missionary on the Mountain, Kenny Easton.
Hello, America, and welcome to the mountain. I am the missionary on this particular mountain, Kenny Easton. If it is your first time joining us, welcome. Let us know how your quarantine/social distancing is going in the comment section below, regardless of what platform you are listening on. You can also post your prayer requests, or if you prefer confidentiality, you can email me at missionaryonthemountain@gmail.com. Or send me a message via Facebook at Facebook/Missionary on the Mountain. You can also send any feedback or suggestions for the podcast to us there, which we, of course, always appreciate. So this podcast is now available on Apple Podcast, Anchor, Castbox, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you can listen to podcasts. So today's agenda. First, we're going to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 situation, kind of like we did last week. But this week, we're going to talk about how you can avoid the next panic next time a disaster comes around. Then, Jen and I will talk about more books you can read during your extended time at home. And we'll talk briefly about the website. We'll read some scripture, and we will hear a few words of wisdom. But let's go ahead and start with an update.
Mission Update.
So the dogs are still ecstatic that we get to be home with them all day, every day. Our 10 chickens are still laying strong, so we're not participating in the egg shortage, and we're able to share with our neighbors. I think we have 4 dozen in the refrigerator right now, and we've been given a dozen a week away, so I think we're getting about 6 to 10 eggs every single day. The Missionary on the Mountain website is up and running, complete with all the podcast episodes and a blog that Jennifer and I are contributing to. So follow the link in the description of this podcast and check out our website and our blog post about how to be prepared for the next pandemic, much of which, of course, we will cover right now. So, the blog post that we just put up this week is 7 suggestions or directions or guidelines in order to prepare you for the next time this kind of thing happens, whether it's a pandemic or anything else. So the first thing on our list, number 1, and these are in no specific order of importance, but the compilation of all of them is important. So number 1 is learn to grow plants, then a garden, then your food. So what this bullet point means is you need to start by growing a plant or 2 in your home. You need to experiment. You need to understand what you're doing. Try herbs or another edible plant that's easy to grow. After you get used to tending and cooking with a year-round herb garden, something small you can fit in a windowsill, try a few plants in a small garden. That will depend, time of year, of course, will depend on where you live, but learn about your local soil on your specific plot of land. You can take a sample into your local garden center, and they will analyze it for you and give you tips on how to build up your soil. Grow vegetables you and your family like to eat. Jennifer and I like things different from each other, but we like peppers and tomatoes, and I like Brussels sprouts and collard greens, and we both like corn and things like that. So figure out what you and your family like to eat. Figure out what grows well and what doesn't. Consider your climate, your altitude, and your growing season length. Give tomatoes, onions, garlic, peppers, potatoes, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, corn, greens, and lettuce a try. These ones aren't real hard to grow. A lot of lettuces can grow very quickly and will grow inside. A lot of herbs will grow in a windowsill just fine. A lot of the root plants are easy to grow. Potatoes in particular are not hard to grow in most places in the United States. So experiment with perennials. Give strawberries a try. Try asparagus, Jerusalem artichokes. If you live in a place where you can, do fruit trees. Some of the higher altitudes and colder climates, fruit trees aren't possible, but a lot of places apple trees will grow, so give that a shot. And then, of course, herbs like oregano, which are perennial. So once you find fruits and vegetables that you enjoy cooking and eating, you can grow large amounts of them, and pay special attention to things you can easily preserve. Expand your garden to provide enough of those foods, the ones you can preserve, the ones that you enjoy, to supply your family's annual use. And then each year rotate and adjust according to your family's specific needs. And that way you have nutritious, delicious, homegrown food that you know your family likes and you know exactly where it came from all year round. So that's number one. Number two, learn to can your garden produce. So once you've grown a little bit and you're comfortable growing your own produce, then can that stuff. But start off by buying a canning book, a book on canning. Watch a few videos. Look online for tutorials. Every fruit and vegetable cans a little bit differently. Altitude, time, temperature are all extremely important and differ from food to food. So after you have some knowledge, try it. Try it over and over until you get it right. Buy a box of fresh fruit and can it. Find vegetables on sale, buy a whole bunch of them, can them. Once you get the hang of it, can the produce from your garden each summer and fall. And then you know exactly where the canned goods you have on your shelf came from. Use those canned goods throughout the year, and then make notes about what you wish you had canned more of. So if you're run short of something, for instance, Jennifer and I run short on Brussels sprouts this year. That's something we're going to grow more of next year. So make notes of those kind of things, and then also what you canned in excess. Oh man, I have 15 cans of green beans I never use because my family doesn't like them. Make those mental notes and adjust your garden and your canning each season, and that way you can optimize your family's dietary needs each year. So, next is number 3. This is to establish an emergency pantry. So as you learn to can your garden produce, start stocking an emergency pantry. Establish a place in your house to store supply of non-perishable food items, paper goods, other emergency supplies. So start with a few necessities. A large package of toilet paper, for instance, would have been a handy thing to have during this crisis. Dry pastas, sauces, canned goods, trash bags, bottled water, dry spices, herbs, etc. Well, once you have a small supply, each time you go to the supermarket or to the store, to Walmart, whatever, buy a few extra items and add them to your emergency pantry. And just build your stock that way. Just a few items, a handful of items, and then eventually you'll be fully stocked. So build up your supplies until you have, let's say, about 6 months of food, bottled water, and other necessities. And then at that point, be sure to maintain or add to your supply constantly. Use the goods as they approach their expiration date, and that way you're not wasting anything, and then you can replace them with things that have a much further in the future expiration date. So that's number 3. Number 4, continuously collect emergency medical supplies and medications. So this one's really important. In your emergency pantry, that same place you're keeping your food, designate an area for medical supplies. If you have a prescription medication that's particularly important, especially if you need it to survive, if it has a relatively long shelf life and doesn't need to be refrigerated, have a 6-month backup supply on hand at all times of that medication. Explain to your doctor your reasons for wanting it. I'm sure they'll be understanding. Tell them it's in case of emergency, and you could even use this COVID-19 pandemic as an example of why you might need something like that. In addition, keep a growing supply of aspirin, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, Robitussin, Benadryl, Tums, Pepto-Bismol, and any other commonly used over-the-counter medications, including treatments for things like menstrual cramps. Keep on hand ace bandages, splints, gauze, band-aids, butterfly strips. All of these things are things that you may not use on a daily basis, but if you need them, you have to have them. So have all these things on hand. Also, things like aspirin and acetaminophen have multi-uses. Aspirin isn't just a painkiller. It can also help in case of a heart attack or as a blood thinner, things like that. So these are things that are smart to keep on hand. Keep up a supply of nitrile gloves or latex gloves if you're not allergic to latex, but nitrile tends to be the go-to these days. Surgical masks, cold hot packs, triple antibiotic ointment, hydrocortisone cream, Vaseline, 90% rubbing alcohol, hydrogen peroxide, and things like lotions are good to have as well. So once you have a stockpile of those particular essentials, then you could expand and consider getting a basic field surgical kit, a tourniquet, some tubing, other less common medications perhaps. But be sure to rotate your medications according to their expiration dates, because a lot of those have half-lives and shelf lives according to those half-lives. So that's number 4. Number 5. Now that you have all these other things in place, think about your home. Think about your home's self-sufficiency. Here's just a few ideas, and every home will be different, but you could dig a well or put in rain barrels so that your water supply is self-sufficient. You could mount solar panels or erect a wind turbine so that you can make your own electricity. Dig a pond so that you can put fish in it, and it can act as dual purpose for water storage. Let's see, you could also install a wood-burning stove so that you have multi ways to heat your home. Wire in a generator in case of emergencies. If you live on a river or on a body of water, put in a water wheel turbine. Install an emergency propane tank wherever you are. Raise some livestock. I like to call that the walking refrigerator. Try a few chickens maybe first to get started, and that way you have eggs and as well as meat if you need it. Get more freezer and refrigerator space and stock those spaces. Be ready to supply things you need from your own home, and that way you've maximized your home's self-sufficiency. Next is number 6. Maximize your home and your family's security. So when times get tough, people get desperate, and when people get desperate, they're willing to do things that they wouldn't normally do. So your family needs to be trained, your home needs to be secure, and you need to be aware. So dogs, I think, are a great first defense for your home. Even family dogs who wouldn't normally hurt a fly will bark when an intruder comes onto your property, and that buys you enough time to prepare yourself. More dogs equal more alarms. Jennifer and I have 4 dogs. Cameras with motion detection are cheap and easy to install these days. So today's technology allows these new systems to alert your smartphone when motion is detected, as well as recording to the cloud, real-time viewing, and two-way audio. So these are things that you can really do to increase the security of your home, and you can do it very quickly and very affordably. Sturdy windows and doors, especially on the ground level of your home, are essential. Deadbolts and multiple locks can be great deterrents, as well as fences, gates, no trespassing signs, and neighborhood watch signs even. Finally, and most importantly, you and your family should responsibly own and train with firearms that are appropriate for their size and skill level. So they should be comfortable and proficient to the point that they could defend themselves and their family in a life or death situation. Firearm safety is so important. So it's important that you expose your kids to firearms and teach them responsibility and firearm safety and how to handle a firearm. And that will increase the level of security at your home substantially. So that is number 6. Number 7, build relationships with your family, friends, and neighbors. So the most important thing that you can do to prepare for any unrest in society is to nurture the relationships with the people around you. In highly stressful and uncertain times, you want to be able to trust and rely on the people around you. Get to know your neighbors, exchange knowledge, trade resources, build trust. Be honest and genuine. Tend to your family relationships. They are your support in trying times. Be open and honest with your kids, your parents, your siblings. Don't lie, don't hide things. Communicate. So follow the golden rule. Love your neighbor as yourself. Understand the needs of your immediate family. Understand what they need from you. Empathize and act with kindness. Show patience when it is hardest and compassion when it is least deserved. When things get bad, be the rock that your family needs. If you live your life this way every day, not just in times of crisis, your neighbors will know that they can come and knock on your door in time of need instead of panicking or even worse. So get to know your neighbors. Get to know your family. Keep your friends close. And just get to know the people around you and build those relationships, because the things that you're going to need most in the difficult times are the relationships with the people around you and the resources that they can provide. So that is the 7 points that we had from our blog. Go to the website, check that out, and be sure to bookmark the website. And we will keep adding to that blog as the days roll forward. But for now, let's get into the news of the day.
Extra news from the pews.
So like I said last episode, I'm not going to bore you with the same old coronavirus fear-mongering that you're hearing from every different angle from all the media outlets and everything like that. So instead, each episode during this pandemic, I will give you the best statistics I can find according to the most reliable sources available. Generally, it's a compilation of the WHO statistics, the CDC statistics, all compiled in the Worldometers info. So, we'll give you that, and then we'll have a few safety reminders. So as of 4 p.m. today, that is March 31st, Tuesday, 2020, here are the worldwide statistics. And again, this is from worldometers.info. So worldwide infected, we have 854,307 people. Dead, we have 42,016, and recovered, we have 176,906. In the United States, again, as of 4 p.m. on Tuesday, March 31st, 2020, here are the statistics from the World Meters. Infected, 185,270 in the United States. Dead, 3,780, approaching the 4,000 mark in the United States dead. And then recovered, 6,347. The highest concentrations of this virus continue to be in New York, Washington, and California. But now New Orleans, Detroit, and Indianapolis have been added as hotspots. So if you can, avoid those places. Remember, in order to protect those who are most vulnerable and to avoid overwhelming our healthcare systems, please heed the guidelines set forth by the CDC and President Trump's highly competent Corona Task Force. The set of guidelines, which has now been extended, I believe, through the end of April, follow these. Don't congregate in large groups. Don't have close contact. Don't touch your face. Wash your hands constantly, use hand sanitizer as frequently as you can, and if at all possible, stay home. Also, don't let the mainstream news media divide us in this time, when we should be most united. In addition to the usual uninformed leftists, I've seen people on both sides of the aisle whom I normally hold to a pretty high fact-checking standard, sharing blatantly and verifiably fake news about President Trump's handling of this pandemic. Fake news from bad outlets without sources, places like MSNBC and CNN's opinion pieces with their dishonest titles bearing real information, to the obvious lies bordering on satire of places like Vox or Huffington Post. Please don't use this awful situation where nearly all of America, including the president and his task force, are trying as hard as possible to do their part to help our great country through this tough time. Remember, do your part. Stay home, stay calm, help those around you, and stay positive. Guys, this too will pass. So all the other news is either coronavirus related or depressing economic numbers, both of which, again, will pass with the death of this virus. So let's jump into the Easton Library with my beautiful, intelligent, and as always, extremely well-read wife, Jennifer Easton.
Welcome to the Easton Library.
Jennifer, welcome back.
Hi.
So we're going to each give you a couple more books for you to enjoy while you are isolated or self-quarantining or however you want to phrase it. Jen, why don't you go first this time? What is your first book that you suggest for your quarantine reading?
The first book I chose is a book I just finished. It is called Molokai by Alan Brennert. And it is a fiction piece. However, it takes place on the island of Molokai, which is in Hawaii. And it was an island that they sent lepers to in the 1800s. So the story follows a young girl who discovers she has leprosy and is sent to live on this isolated island, away from her whole family and all of her friends. And the story kind of traces her journey, how, she was put into this situation that she thought was going to be awful and horrible, but she kind of makes a life out of it. So I thought that was a pretty interesting read.
Very cool. And is that an age-appropriate book for anybody, or is that more of an adult read?
It's more of an adult read because there's nothing inappropriate in it, but it's not quite interesting for a younger
Gotcha.
mind.
It's more of an elevated thought kind of read.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent, excellent. All right, well, the first one that I'm going to bring to the table today has to do with our dishonest press, and it is Mark Levin's latest book. I believe it's his latest book, Unfreedom of the Press. If you haven't read any Mark Levin, he's an excellent writer. Liberty and Tyranny, Rediscovering Americanism, both great books. But this one is really digestible for the common public. If you don't like philosophy and politics, this is still the book for you. It really is much more about media and media's role from the beginning of the founding fathers, the beginning of our nation, all the way through current day, and how they treat our current president versus how they treated the last president, and the biases that exist there and have always existed there, actually. So I thought it was a very interesting read, very historical read. And Mark Levin is very good about checking his resources. So if you want to see the sources for everything that he researched, it's all right there in the book. Jen, what's your second?
My second one is called The Unsettlers. It's In Search of the Good Life in Today's America by Mark Sundin. And I chose this one, I read this a while ago, but I chose this one based on your blog that you had written, just kind of about being prepared in, a pandemic situation. And this is kind of an investigative journalist approach of a couple different families as they leave like the hustle and bustle of everyday life and they try to provide for a more self-sufficient lifestyle. And there's a couple different routes that they take to go through that. And it's just kind of interesting to see the different lifestyles and how people adjust to those.
It's almost like homesteaders in a way.
Yeah, some of them are going to homestead. There's one that goes to kind of like more of a group setting. But yeah, they all kind of choose a simpler life from the one that they had.
Very interesting. Also relevant for sure in this time, because if you lived a little bit simpler life and could grow your own food and sustain yourself, then you are in a lot better shape than a lot of the people around you. I would put Jen and I in that category, wouldn't you say, dear?
Yeah. One of the things I kind of found interesting about this book too is that it gives an example from, someplace kind of secluded and in the mountains, but it also gives an example of right outside Detroit. So just kind of showing how this could be possible even if you don't have, an excess of land available to you.
Yeah, very cool. And there's a lot of people that you can look into, books and also YouTubers, that will tell you how to farm on like a quarter acre or less than that, so that you can basically grow your own food in a very, very small area, which is kind of a neat idea. So Jen and I have been kind of living similar to this lifestyle for a while. We've always loved to garden and grow our own food and can and things like that. So I'd say for at least the last, what do you say, dear, 5 years, we've been more or less self-sufficient in those respects. And that's not to say that we don't go to the store and take part in some of the finer things in life that you can't just grow at home yourself. But at the same time, when tough times like this arise, we have a pantry stocked full of food, and we have lots of meat, including wild game and elk and deer and things like that, as well as our chickens that we raise. So I guess I'll go to my final book here, and my final book is actually 2 books. It is the first 2 books of Jurassic Park, by Michael Crichton. These are great books. I actually like the second one better, The Lost World, but the Jurassic Park book itself is very, very good. If you like Michael Crichton, if you like a edge of your seat kind of thriller type book, The book is, I think, better than the movies. So if you like the Jurassic Park movies, it doesn't really have spoilers for the movies. It's much more filler. So you get a lot more detail than you did in the movies. Plus, the third Jurassic Park movie, if you recall, with the pterodactyls and everything, that actually takes place in the first book of the series. So if you haven't read the Michael Crichton series, Jurassic Park, pick those two books up. You could probably find them for probably a nickel or a quarter at your local resale shop, since they're not current new books, but they are good ones. Definitely worth the read. Yeah, anything else you want to add, dear? We're pretty much just doing what everybody else is doing. We're staying inside. Jen's parents have joined us here in the mountains. Like we said earlier in the show, Indianapolis and parts of Indiana and Chicago are kind of hot spots. And they were on vacation in the south. And so we thought it would be smart for them to come up to us in the mountains where we're well supplied and prepared. And so we're going to hang out with my in-laws for the foreseeable future, which is great. Anything else you want to add there, Jen?
I don't think so.
What have you been doing to keep busy?
Well, I've been reading. I did a lot of cleaning projects, and I made some spices that we use often for our foods and things like that.
Mm-hmm. We actually started our garden inside too, so we've been tending to that. That won't go in the ground for a month or better yet, and there's the dogs letting us know that it's time to end the segment. So thank you again, Jen, for joining us. As always, we appreciate you being here, and we will talk to you next week for another update.
Thanks.
So let's get into the scripture of the week.
Scripture of the week.
We have a few scriptures this week. The first one is Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not anxiously look about you, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. Surely I will help you. Surely I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. The next one from Deuteronomy 31:6. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or tremble at them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. And our third one today is 1 Peter 4:12-13. Beloved, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal among you, which comes upon you for your testing, as though some strange thing were happening to you. But to the degree that you share the sufferings of Christ, keep on rejoicing, so that also at the revelation of his glory you may rejoice with exultation. And then finally today, Jeremiah 32:27. Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too difficult for me? Let's jump into today's words of wisdom.
Words of wisdom.
So I thought this first one was particularly pertinent, given how the media has treated so many things lately, including this virus and the elections and the president, etc. So this is from Thomas Jefferson. The man who reads nothing at all is better educated than the man who reads nothing but newspapers. This next one from Jean-Marie Lascaux. Isolation is a loneness that feels forced upon you, like a punishment. Solitude is a loneness you choose and embrace. I think great things can come out of solitude, out of going to a place where all is quiet except the beating of your heart. This next one from Tennessee Williams. When so many are lonely as seem to be lonely, it would be inexcusably selfish to be lonely alone. And then finally from John Lubbock. The whole value of solitude depends upon oneself. It may be a sanctuary or a prison, a haven of repose or a place of punishment, a heaven or a hell, as we ourselves make it. So finally, as we always do, let's end with some prayer requests. First, if you would please pray for and consider supporting our family, our mission, and this podcast. All the links that you need are in the description below, or you can go to www.infaith.org/Kenny-Jennifer-Easton to support us directly through our mission. Pray for the country, pray for your state, pray for your leaders, and pray for our world as we fight this virus together. Our local leaders are making difficult decisions about what to close, when to close, and where to close, and these are things that they need our prayer support in. So pray for them, support them, and do whatever you can to help them. Also, pray for all the teachers, the students, and the workers who are now adapting to this new way of life and new way of education. And finally, pray for our leaders as they navigate us through this difficult time. All of our leaders, from the top down, from the president all the way to your local mayor. So in closing, tune in next week for more news and coronavirus updates, some more scripture, some words of wisdom, and then another deep dive into our Easton Library. Share, like, and subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Facebook, Google Podcasts, CastBox, Spotify, Anchor, and everywhere you listen to your podcasts. Please comment on whatever platform you are listening. Encouragement, criticism, general feedback, or even just a quick hello is always welcome, especially if you disagree with me and would like to talk about an important issue of the day. We would welcome that conversation. We would also love to know how you're doing in these crazy times. Go ahead and drop a comment. We'd appreciate suggestions and comments for the show. So until next week, thanks for listening. Keep praying for us as we continue to pray for you. And as I said in the last episode, God bless you, America. God bless all of you who are working hard to keep us safe and alive. God bless the doctors. God bless the nurses, the interns, the techs. God bless the veterinarians, the EMTs, and the therapists. God bless the firefighters, the police, the truck drivers, the food service workers, and the delivery people. God bless all of you who are the front lines of defense against all forms of attack on our great country, seen and, in this case, especially unseen. God bless all of us around this beautiful globe as we work together to defeat this virus. We will be back with you next week, and as always, have a safe trip down the mountain.
The Missionary on the Mountain podcast is not affiliated with or supported by In Faith or any other mission or organization. We are not funded by nor beholden to anyone but our listeners. All words and opinions expressed on the show are solely those of the individuals expressing them. Find us on YouTube, social media, and your favorite podcast listening platform. Join us next week, and thanks for tuning in to the Missionary on the Mountain podcast.